I can say to you very frankly, if there is a failure to meet safety requirements in the impoundment, such as broke loose here in this area, why then the Congress can act and act affirmatively. And that's what we'll do. We won't allow it to be repeated.
Do you say that from your initial flyover that regulations need to be tightened?
I wish I could answer that with, assurance.
Reporters and cameramen were not permitted to accompany Senator Randolph on his tour of the disaster area. It was explained that recovery problems are now critical. They're bringing bodies out from time to time, and it's just felt by the governor's office, which is the office which is refusing to allow the news media into the area today, that it's just too critical a problem. There are approximately 700 National Guardsmen working in the area and 60 to 70 state police, all plan to be here for some time.
And so began the grim task of recovering the dead. By March 2nd, 72 bodies had been recovered, with more to come. Seven of the victims, missing and presumed dead, their bodies never recovered. The bodies of three small children, 2 boys and a girl aged between 18 months and 3 years, were found but never identified.
I can remember the Huey helicopters flying over where we lived almost constantly. So, and it was a big thing too, because you're watching the national news. I think it was Huntley Brinkley on Channel 3. I mean, to see something local like that on national news, and then you had the local news channels that were covering things constantly. Yeah, it was just amazing.
This is a temporary morgue in Mann Junior High School's gymnasium, where Senator Randolph has come to console the bereaved and the people waiting to find out if relatives of theirs will be brought in here dead or hopefully alive.
One of the most cherished photographs I have is a photograph of my grandmother volunteering at the morgue. It was, the picture speaks more words than I ever could. And that was common ground for everybody. So, you know, the one thing that makes me very proud to be from Southern West Virginia and from West Virginia as a whole is how we always come together. And I know that's sad, but, you know, I saw it then and I still see it every day today. So that's those components. And I remember the watches. You know, everybody flocking to all the downstream bridges and just everybody from the community out. And it sounds kind of morbid. They weren't looking to watch a dead body float by. They were out searching in hopes of finding a survivor clinging to a piece of structure.
Crews from private contractors, mine operators, the Division of Highways, the National Guard, and the Corps of Engineers worked to repair roads and bridges. Other relief agencies provided help, and donations of clothing and household items were gathered. 507 homes were lost or demolished. 44 mobile homes were destroyed. Nearly 1,000 houses suffered some degree of damage. Homes marked with a yellow X had been searched and cleared, meaning the bulldozers could move in and smash them before burning. Nearly 100 homes were burned the day this photograph was taken. Smoke from the burning debris lingered over the valley for days. 30 business establishments, more than 1,000 cars and trucks, 10 bridges, all destroyed. The county road and the rail lines serving the valley's coal mines were severely damaged. The Red Cross provided typhoid shots, medication, distributed food and water and clothing, and maintained 5 shelters housing 1,000 people. Property damage was estimated at over $50 million, more than $336 million in today's dollars.
once the initial surge came down, a lot of private bridges, a lot of railroad crossings, every stream obstruction led to a buildup, and then you had another structural collapse. As it went down, just little mini collapses of water building up and going. And I remember personally the first time I was at Buffalo Creek after the disaster. My daddy took me up, and this was several months later. It looked so serene. It was black, but it was filled over level from hillside to hillside, just with all the debris that washed down and leveled out. And of course, there'd been recovery equipment on it then. But I remember thinking, God, I've never seen this much flat ground in my life. And it was the refuse and the debris that washed down and filled from hillside to hillside on the impacted area. And it just looked massive to me at that stage. Like I said, I was very young. But I remember that distinctly, and I remember the railroad tracks. And I remember the rail steel from the tracks in areas it looked like a pretzel, with that much force of the water coming down and what those people were impacted by. I mean, enough to bend the rail of the railroad tracks, to bend the steel. The destruction, yeah, and some places where the water, and knowing now, because I've been back up there and looked at the structures now and understand a little bit more of the mechanics about what happened, but how it missed certain places. And essentially when it came out of the Three Forks area, it went across, hit the hillside, and bounced back. I mean, it was, you had a lot of ricochet action going on. So one house that was clearly in the inundation path could have been missed just because the water bounced off the hillside and shot across the hollow to another house.
A geological and engineering analysis following the disaster found that Dam Number 3 was not built using engineering practices standard in earthen dam construction, that no foundation preparation was done, and no attempt at compaction of the fill material was made other than the occasional grading by bulldozer. The dam was built on a thick layer of sludge 40 to 100 feet deep, a weak material with negligible shear strength, and that the overflow system consisting of one 24-inch diameter pipe was inadequate. Also noted was a lack of a monitoring system to warn of structural changes within the dam. The lack of definitive, clear-cut, and enforceable laws regarding the safety of mine refuse banks and impounding structures, both at the federal and the state levels, was cited as a major shortcoming that contributed to the disaster. Numerous lawsuits were filed against Pittston in the years following the disaster. 645 residents settled for $13.5 million, about $13,000 each after legal costs. The state of West Virginia accepted a settlement offer of $1 million after seeking $100 million from the company. Ultimately, 3 separate commissions, federal, state, and citizens, concluded that Buffalo Mining Company and owner Pittston blatantly disregarded standard safety procedures. The disaster brought change to what had been, up to this point, a loosely regulated industry.
So how widespread were the practices that led to the Buffalo Creek disaster at that time? Were there other Buffalo Creeks waiting to happen in other parts of the state or throughout the Appalachian region?
Without question, because there were no regulations on anything. It was simply not even controlled placement requirements for the coarse refuse material that generally was used to impound the water, which were the coal processing fines. And then sometimes impoundments to make up fresh water so you could run the preparation facilities and perhaps provide a source of water needed for the underground mining operations that might be occurring. So it was very widespread throughout eastern Appalachia.
Right after the disaster in 1973, the West Virginia legislature passed and the governor signed into law the West Virginia Dam Safety Act that changed the code to state how owners, operators of dams, coal, non-coal, had to construct and maintain those structures. And then 4 years after that, Congress passed in 1977 the Surface Mine Control and Reclamation Act. And in that federal act, it allowed states the opportunity to obtain primacy of their coal environmental enforcement within their state boundaries if they so choose. And West Virginia was one of those states that passed environmental regulations for coal mining operations. Also, we have the West Virginia Surface Mining Act and the West Virginia Surface Mining Rules that both take into account these coal-related dams. And also we have the West Virginia Coal Safety Dam Rules that are specific to only coal dams themselves, that outlines the inspection and enforcement and maintenance and operation of those dams. And some of the things that are in those rules and those acts are inspection and enforcement requirements that our inspectors do.
These things are designed to withstand earthquakes now. And so the care that's given, and it's not all DEP. I mean, we have our partners throughout the federal government, MSHA, some of the best design engineers and some of the most qualified individuals when it comes to dam control structures that I've ever had the pleasure to work with. Our own engineering staff, our senior engineers here that are assigned as our dam control engineers in the region. Each region has one. They work hand in hand with MSHA. The water discharges, that we bring in our counterparts with under the Clean Water Act with EPA. The preparation plants that generate the material. You're getting into our Air Control Act. So there's so much oversight, so much detail that goes into this and review these permits. And one of the best components we have, I think, in the West Virginia program in particular is our emergency warning plans. And the emergency warning plans are established that as your examinations that are going on routinely, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annually, full-scale evaluations by qualified engineers. They're designed in trigger limits to like the phreatic surface within the fill material, decant critical stage construction certifications, a whole host of issues. But there are thresholds that indicate warning signs prior to something becoming a critical, risk of catastrophic failure that kick into place that involves the local EMS, state homeland security, everybody. These emergency warning plans, evacuation centers are outlined, triggers that require, procedurally for the evacuation orders to be given on the county level. So there's a whole host of safeguards that are in place, not only in the construction and design of these facilities, but in the event that something should be threatening, to put emergency response in place prior to a catastrophic failure. So, those are things that just, not even thought of, but that's to give you an idea of where the program's evolved to and how much emphasis we placed on it. And I've said even when I was director of the mining program, there's nothing more important that the mining program looks at overall than our response and our obligations related to refuse impoundments. These are Class C structures by definition, most of them are. And what that means is that should failure occur, you can anticipate loss of human life. And there's no component of the mining program that is more important than that aspect of it. So, as far as my personal feelings about it, like I said earlier, it definitely shaped who I was, why I do what I do. And I think it's the most important aspect of what the mining division does under the DEP umbrella.